Hello.
Hello, hello.
In today's video, I would like to talk about what it was like to find out that Craig had autism. I wanted to talk about this subject because I feel like it's something that a lot of parents can relate to, and it was likely a hard time for you as well as it was for us, for me anyway.
It was for both of us.
I showed it more though, I'm just more emotional. But after Craig turned 2 and he wasn't saying very many words, but most of all, he wasn't responding to commands or really anything that we said, and his words weren't used to communicate, I started to get a sinking feeling. And I covertly went to the public library. And started looking at books on childhood disabilities. I didn't want anyone to know that I was looking at those because I felt like in a way I was betraying Craig and being unfair to him and even thinking that. So secretly I went and I looked at the books, and specifically I looked for disabilities that included lack of communication. And the word autism kept coming up over and over. It was really the only thing that matched. But other things didn't match. I mean, Craig didn't sit at home all day and line up cars or build block towers.
Or the classic, there was a movie, I can't remember what it was, when we were
It was in child
adults.
development.
Yeah, where they would spin
the plates.
The plates. And
he didn't really fixate on anything.
Right. Nothing very specific.
No.
Like time and time again.
Right.
But he was to where he could be on the floor and he could be doing something. And you, at that time, you know, if you even raising your voice or something, you can get a child to turn and look. Mm-hmm. Well, you could walk right up behind Craig, just right behind him, and just go, Craig, you know, really loud right behind his head, and he wouldn't make any response.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
So that's why they end up sending him to a hearing specialist.
Right.
Is
that
where
was
we
our
ended up going.
First step. When I was looking at the descriptions of autism, it also said that they were not affectionate and they treated people like furniture. And Craig has always been affectionate.
Craig's been a hugger forever.
He was our cuddly little boy. How could he have autism?
Yeah.
Especially
Smiled,
in the way that they described it.
Yeah.
So in order, at that time anyway, to be diagnosed with autism, you had to match so many of the criteria. And Craig did match several of them. He did flap. He flapped his arms. But really, we didn't think of, it didn't seem like he was just doing that. I mean, I realize now that autism manifests, like what you see when they're a small child is not necessarily the way they're going to be when they get older. And sometimes it gets worse, sometimes it gets better. Well, Craig flapped his hands sometimes, but it was just it seemed to us like when he was excited, and he would make this ee sound, which he still makes today. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I know there was like 3 or 4 that fit Craig. So.
Yeah, the not paying any attention to voice commands or anything like that. Mm-hmm. You couldn't startle Craig.
Right. And you couldn't get him to, if you said sit down or come here, it was like you were deaf. So like Joe said, in talking to our family doctor, who didn't think that Craig could have autism because he didn't fit the mold that you read in the textbooks back then, he referred us to a speech pathologist because we couldn't get a regular hearing test on Craig. At that time, the hearing test involved wearing headphones, and Craig wouldn't tolerate that. So we took him to a speech pathologist, and they first tested his hearing. And how they did it was I remember there was almost like a window front, and they had monkeys and different things in there, and they would clap cymbals, and they watched to see if Craig turned toward the noise, and he did. So we knew he wasn't deaf. At the speech pathologist, she spent 10 minutes with Craig and diagnosed him with autism, which we both thought was unfair. Like, how can she know in 10 minutes? But in reading over things, and on the car ride home, I think we both came to the realization that Craig had autism.
Yeah, that was the longest drive I'd ever made from Des Moines back down to Knoxville, where we lived at that time. That was a long drive. It was quiet for a while, very quiet. Neither of us really knew what to say to the other one.
Well, you know, when you go home, you're going to have to tell your family.
Yep.
And that wasn't easy. But actually, I feel like some of them already suspected something was different about Craig. I don't know if they suspected autism because it just wasn't well known back then.
It was
was
hardly
like
known at all.
One
really.
in 100,000 children were born with autism when
We're diagnosed. Yeah.
Yeah, we're diagnosed.
Yeah, there was probably a lot that were born
that
didn't get diagnosed.
When I look back,
misdiagnosed later.
Sure. I think everybody was just kind of lumped into cognitive disabilities back then.
Right.
Like they didn't put a name on it. It was all generalized. When I look at the special education class when we were in school, it was, maybe we just didn't know, but it seemed like it was just a general cognitive disabilities class, or maybe they had trouble with certain subjects. And I think of a man now, well, he would have been, he passed away several years ago, but we had a boy in our class that everyone just thought he was weird. And he had older parents, so he definitely didn't dress with the styles that everyone else did. But he was very, very smart, like a genius. He always won the spelling bees. And when we got to like high school, we realized that he could listen to a song once and he could play it beautifully. But I never thought about him having autism because we didn't know anything about it back then and no one talked about it. But looking back, I'm 100% sure he had high functioning autism.
Oh yeah, he did. Yeah. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. And sadly, I don't think a lot of people took time to get to know him. But so we found out Craig had autism. And I had a lot of, even in the process of finding out, I just had so many fears about what our life was going to be like and how was it going to affect Stephanie, and was Craig going to have any friends, and would he be invited to birthday parties? It's just, actually, it was almost like a mourning period. It's, to me, finding out your child has autism or maybe any disability is like the loss of a dream. It's not what you ever pictured for your child or your life. So I went through a time where I did have a really hard time, and luckily I didn't have what my parents would call a nervous breakdown, but I did spend a lot of time worrying and crying and not sleeping.
Sometimes we just hold him. You just hold him.
Mm-hmm. And Joe did, I remember one time I was just so worried about it, and I remember Joe saying to me, no matter what happens, he's still Craig. It doesn't change that. He's still our son. He's still the same little boy, just because he has a diagnosis.
Right at that moment, he is Craig. And that's all you could ask for.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. So after, and also Joe said to me, just remember, God is not going to give us anything that we can't handle. And
I actually found out later that statement's not
right. That's
true.
Not actually
It's not that God doesn't give you anything you can't handle. It's that God will not give you anything that you can't handle alone. I mean, that you can. I'm saying that wrong.
You can't handle with His help.
Yeah, that you need God. You know, and we still do. We have had a strong faith, strong Christian friends,
Mm-hmm.
a lot of people.
We have a village of people that really helped us. Our best friends were so wonderful. They asked to take Stephanie and Craig. I mean, from the time Stephanie was born, they had her at least once a week. They just loved having Stephanie, and they had 2 boys that were maybe 5 and I don't know, they weren't very old, but they were old enough they weren't babies anymore, and they loved taking Stephanie. And then when we had Craig, they took Craig too.
Yep.
And
Unconditional.
yep, even after his diagnosis, they still wanted to take Craig. And I don't know what we would have done without them and our parents, because our parents were really wonderful too. I feel like we never felt like we needed a break, because we always had people wanting to take the kids. And Stephanie was wonderful with Craig. She's always been the most wonderful big sister. When he was born, maybe she loved him a little too much.
She was rough with him.
Yeah, but she made Craig do everything she did. I feel like Stephanie didn't really give him a chance to not be affectionate and involved, because whether he wanted to or not, he was going to play with her and do what she wanted him to do.
Yeah, with the friends we had and family, it was, I mean, we had respite care before anybody even knew what that term meant.
Yeah,
I mean, as far as I didn't know.
right. I
And,
didn't.
Yeah.
I'd never heard of it
So
either.
we got breathers. I mean, it's not like, we were trying to drop our children off, and get away from them.
Right.
But it was nice sometimes just to go grocery shopping.
Yep.
Yeah,
because otherwise we did everything
Yep.
Joe would stay home with the
Yep.
kids, and I would
all
go
the time. Yep.
to the store, or even Stephanie's things at school. Joe would stay home with Craig, and I would go to the event, or vice versa.
Yep, film it so the other could see. And the great thing was Stephanie had grown up with it. She was used to that. Just having one parent to some of that stuff
Right.
didn't mean anything different to her.
And the funny thing was, when we told Stephanie that Craig had autism, she was like proud of it. She would, anyone that would come up, she would come up on, she would tell them that her brother had autism, and that it just meant that he might not talk to you. And she was just like
Yep.
his mother from the beginning. And she was with Bennett too. She's just a motherly person. So, but I don't want you to think finding out was hard, but having a child with autism has been wonderful. I mean, I talk about meltdowns, but we don't focus on that, and they don't happen every day. It's just something that I feel like we need to talk about to help each other out, because I think it's great to get ideas from other people and see what works for them. And
It's nice to
what
see
has
how
worked.
this has turned into such a community for it.
Yeah, I really love it. I'm just so thankful for all the people that comment and share and send me emails. And I hope that it continues, and I hope that this can help many other parents. And I just want you to know that you're not alone if it's really hard for you and you find out that your child has autism. But it's not a bad thing. I feel like God really blessed us by giving us Craig. There's a song, is it Bruce Carroll, that sometimes miracles hide. And I always felt that way about Craig, that they had a child. Apparently, the song was about parents that had a child that had a disability. And in the end, they realized that sometimes miracles hide, and God gives you things that are blessings, and you don't even realize it at first. And that's definitely the way it's been for us with Craig. He has brought our family so much joy. And anyone who gives Craig a chance and gets to know him also benefits from knowing Craig.
Yeah. Now, the subject matter, now, let me speak to the dads out there. That first time when you find out, that is so tough. It's beyond tough. I mean, you always hear people talk about when somebody, they almost died, they just saw their life flash before them. Well, as a dad of a son, I saw his life just completely change from what I thought it was going to be. It's tough.
Yeah, that was the toughest part.
But you don't know. I mean, if God closes a door, he opens a window. Well, a lot of times with a child with special needs, your whole house becomes windows. There's every opportunity that you don't get, there's an opportunity in a different way.
I knew this was going to be a hard one, but I just felt it was important to talk about.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know if I have anything more to
I
add.
think I'm done.
Okay.
I'll think of something after.
Right.
Once
I'm
you turn
sure
it
I'll,
off, but
yes, that's how it always is. After I'm done with the video or when I read the comments, I think of things that I wish I would have said, but I can address that in another video if I think of it.